Hi. Wonderful things happen when there is a gathering of great people with visions and actions. Welcome to our Mondays with EFTI Talk. The Eric Friedenheim Tourism Institute and the Department of Tourism, Hospitality, and Event Management in the College of Health and Human Performance at the University of Florida is presenting to you EFTI Talk, focus on AI, data science in hospitality and the future. Ms. Edith Hall Friedenheim, EFTI board members, I appreciate you and your support. There are no words which can convey our respect for our leader, Dr. Mike Reed. We would like to take this opportunity to let you know that it is our honor and a privilege to work with you together. Thank you for serving as our host today. Dean Reed, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Fu. On behalf of the University of Florida and the College of Health and Human Performance, I want to welcome everyone who's tuned into this webinar. We're delighted to have you with us on what we think is a really exciting and timely topic. I emphasize timely because the University of Florida has recently received as a gift the country's most powerful artificial intelligence computer from the maker NVIDIA. That computer will be mated with the HyperGator 3 supercomputer here on campus in coming months, giving the university advanced AI capabilities that are unsurpassed by any university in the United States or around the world at this point. Because of this looming transition in our university's infrastructure, across campus, colleges and units are making an effort to explore AI, machine learning, big data as sources of expansion and growth and enrichment for their academic programs and their research. At the College of Health and Human Performance, the Department of Tourism, Hospitality, and Event Management has really taken the lead in this, working with the Eric Friedenheim Tourism Institute to develop new initiatives in the area of artificial intelligence, to develop new curricular offerings, and to be the first department in our college to offer a webinar on this exciting topic. We're very fortunate to have two industry executives with us who bring a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, and a lot of understanding around the application of AI in the hospitality and tourism world. I'm honored to introduce Bob Shallow. Bob is a Florida Gator. He's an HHP alum, and he's the Vice President of Franchise Operations for Jack in the Box restaurants. Bob graduated from UF with a BS in Recreation, Parks, and Tourism over 2 decades ago. He now has over a quarter century of experience in the restaurant and hospitality industry. In his current position, he leads a franchise division of approximately 1,000 Jack in the Box operations across 14 states and Guam. Bob, it's an honor to have you with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
In addition, we're honored to have Pavan Kapoor. Pavan is also a loyal Gator. He's the Senior Vice President of Commercial Operations at Caesars Entertainment. In that position, he's responsible for revenue management, all digital and e-commerce channels, operations of their call center, and also, bless your heart, Pavan, you're in charge of the charter airline program. He has the skills and the ability to do this based in part on his degree from the University of Florida in statistics, but also from a long and distinguished career with other national corporations, including Toyota and First Data. Pavan, it's an honor to have you with us. Again, welcome to the University of Florida.
Thanks, happy to be here.
So I'd love to, what we want to do is to hear from these two experts in the industry. And let me start this off by beginning with a question that we'll ask each of our panelists to respond to. General terms, what do you see as sort of major impact of AI and machine learning in the hospitality industry? And in particular, how has that affected your industry, the part of your company that you work with? Where do you see it having a distinct sort of a specific application? Bob, could we start off with you on that question?
Sure. Right now, the restaurant industry is at its infancy when it comes to really utilizing AI and actual restaurant operations. Most of it right now is really in consumer analytics, machine learning, and how do we accelerate and move faster. Right now, our industry, and especially at the restaurant level, we still use historical data as our guidelines for future operation decisions. So I'll give an example. So labor management, food cost management, we're using historical data that's within our systems to make decisions on what the future would be. But that is looking back. It's not necessarily, it's not learning, it's not helping the manager, foresee what's going to happen in the future. That still is a human element. And so helping our people accelerate their learning, how to react faster, a really simple example of this is a storm is coming. In Florida, we're used to hurricanes. A computer in a restaurant right now looks back and goes, there was no hurricanes over the last 4 weeks. This is what we think our sales will be next week. Well, that doesn't replace the human factor to say, hey, wait, we got to make a lot of decisions on what's going to happen, in the next coming week and where our schedules, our food costs, our ordering is going to be. So for us, what we're looking for is how do we move faster? How do we get smarter and get more data to our leaders to where they can make decisions in the restaurant based on future probabilities? And so that is going to be really exciting, for our industry in that it really relieves the manager from a lot of what they have to do in analytics and gets them to a point of where they actually can lead and coach and implement. And so we're really excited to see, that change. Where it is right now, we're using it a lot is really with some of our third-party vendors. So think of third-party delivery apps. That would be Uber Eats, Grubhub, DoorDash, Postmates are for, in the industry that we're using every day. They're really leveraging AI to understand who their consumer is, what their consumer wants to order, and then how do we partner with those brands to make sure that our brand is up there and making sure that we're available for our guests. So right now we are leveraging outside of the industry. It's really exciting to see where we are able to use AI in the actual restaurants themselves, to see where that goes.
Could I ask you to follow up on that a little bit? What I have heard industry people talk about in tourism in general, I think, is the use of sort of commercial firms that provide large data sets and analyze and do predictions of large data sets to facilitate decision making by attractions or by companies down in Florida that depend on the travel industry. In your firm, do you imagine that the individual restaurants themselves can generate site-specific data that they can use for prediction, or do you think this is something that requires more comprehensive data from a larger number of locations?
The answer is both. It's all of the above. We have site-specific data that will allow, site-specific decisions to be made. At the same point, we're always looking at data analytics from a bigger perspective. So consumers, what are our consumers actually telling us that they want us to provide them? And for that, it's a much larger data set. And I think another part of what your question is like, we have to leverage third party right now. And a big question out there is who has the data?
Yeah.
Who has, the customer perceptions? Who understands what the customer is ordering, what the customer wants? So that's always a big question, for a lot of firms is where is the data? Who has it? How can you access it? How can you data mine it to make better decisions?
Yes.
And so I think that's a big question out there is who actually has it, who has access to it, and how can you use it at a faster rate to make decisions?
Wow, that's an important question. I hope we get to come back to that, but I don't want to lose track of the wisdom that Pavan's got. He comes from a very different perspective. I'm sure that Hera's has different challenges than Jack in the Box. Pavan, help us. Tell us something about AI in your firm.
Sure. So as you know, I work in the integrated casino environment, which is not just a casino, but it's a hotel, a large food and beverage outlet, and as entertainment complex as far as shows and concerts, and as you mentioned, a large charter air program. And so, predictive models have been at the core of the gaming industry for many, many years. But as mentioned, times have changed and we need to be a little bit more reactive with our models. And so, you guys have seen movies like The Hangover or any other, movies based in the casino industry, and you see we have these opulent suites that we give to our, most valuable customers. But I think at the core of how we figure out who to give that to is our predictive models and our machine learning algorithms. So we need to know how that customer is going to behave, how they're going to utilize all our assets on property, such as the planes, the entertainment, the shows, and then how do we predict how valuable they are to us using advanced predictive models, and that's how we determine who gets to utilize those assets.
Mike, you are mute.
Yeah, well, not the first time I've done that. I can imagine with the history and the expertise that you have in predictive modeling and data analytics, that a lot of the data on which your firm relies is generated internally. But you hear other industries talking about data mining social media, looking for outside data sources. That does your firm cross that divide? Do y'all seek data from both sides of the fence?
Absolutely. The data that we have internally would only be for customers that have visited us before, signed up for our loyalty program that we know. That's about half of our business today. There's still another half of our visitors that have never come to the property. So what do we know about them? So maybe not at an individual level, but we can use something like IP address from guests that are visiting our website. So if we can marry that with external data that tells me things about maybe zip code level data from that IP address. So what is the median household income for that zip code, or what is the propensity for fine dining or propensity to gamble based on external data? We can use that data. Social review sites, all very important as we think about what are the reasons for our customer to visit, and what are they happy with or unhappy with on our property, so we can make changes accordingly.
Yeah. So based on the obvious importance of AI and data analytics in both your industries, let me ask, and data and Pavan will stay with you. Do you see areas where AI will be disruptive in the gaming industry? Do you see big changes that AI could be driving in the future?
Sure, I'll give you an example of something that we're utilizing today, which is a product that we call Ivy, and she's actually our AI chatbot. And so as guests are on property and you check into your hotel room, you'll immediately get a text from our AI assistant, and she'll ask you if you need anything in your room. And so rather than picking up the phone and calling the front desk when you need extra towels, you can just text our chatbot, which is completely AI powered and can answer, well over 50% of the common problems. If she can't, then it'll go to a live agent. But that's very disruptive in industry. It's made it so that our guests, get their answers solved much, much quicker. And it helps us obviously with staffing and being more efficient.
Do you find that your guests adapt to that technology pretty quickly? Are they pretty open to that chatbot approach?
Absolutely. As more and more people are more comfortable with mobile devices and chatting, obviously there's things that she can answer. I think that the most common question she gets asked is to go out on a date. But yes, I think, people are more and more comfortable with technology today. In fact, as we shift from call center operations, making reservations at our hotels, we now see a large shift into not only website for making hotel reservations, but actually our mobile app now takes more reservations than we ever could imagine this early.
Yeah. Bob, jump in here. Help us. What do you see as disruptive about AI in the Jack in the Box corporation?
Well, I look at it in terms of very similar to what Pavan just said when he mentioned the app. So a lot of it, especially recently with the pandemic, is we have a third party. Well, we leverage third party apps, and then we have our own internal. And so as consumers, they're becoming more and more comfortable using technology to place their order. And so as that becomes, less or easier for them to utilize, it becomes easier. So we joke, hey, do you want to skip the line at Jack in the Box? Order on your app. And so there, the app learns what your preferences are and can adapt to the items you wish. It can smart sell and say, hey, are you aware that based on your preferences, this is also available or it's a current promotion, and you can place that order. Now, using geofencing, we know when you arrive at the restaurant, and we can say, are you here? Please let us know you're here, and it automatically inserts into our POS systems or our point of service systems to where it's now being prepared for you a second you arrive on site. And so what we have found in the industry, and it could have been started really by the airline industries, where you started doing a lot of your own check-in, and you have one individual who helps multiple people check in at a time. Think about your grocery store self-service, checkouts. A lot of people have become more comfortable using technology to help their experience. And then we now are just really there as to help for any issues or to accelerate. So I see that as, has been really instrumental and game changing in the industry lately.
So I think both of you have mentioned AI technology that's pretty familiar to the consumer, both franchise or business specific apps and also chatbots. Another technology that has been hinted at or promised and sort of dabbled at was brought up by Dr. Fu. She sent me a video, I think yesterday or today, about robotics in the restaurant industry and the notion that a lot of food production might become robotic. Are you using robots in your industries? Do you have any robot Faro dealers? Do you have any, robot burger flippers? What are you seeing in that regard?
Pavan, you want to go first, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, we at Caesars do not use any robots today, but I think that that is the wave of the future. As I have seen some other hotel companies use that specifically on room service delivery. Yep. So you can program the location of a room, and then a robot shows up there. They also have I won't say robot vending machines, but they're similar to vending machines, but they're a little bit more robotic than typically what you see. So we're not using any today, but I don't think Dr. Fu's wrong that is the future.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think, what robotics can do is it solves for an ongoing issue. A lot of locations pre-pandemic, we were dealing with 3% unemployment rates or less in a lot of areas of the country. And so, finding, labor or staff to actually, man the restaurants, which is a very labor intensive industry, and so what you're using for is how do you unlock robotics to actually solve for a problem? If the problem is you can't find staff for your restaurants, well, then what can you automate to actually be able to continue to function and provide services? And so, Pavan just mentioned, vendor machines. So yeah, right now I see there's a lead in robotics for food industry, more in vending, or being able to provide items that, you can actually assemble fresh and then still deliver. So, so a bowl, assembling items that you would want to put into a bowl would be much more friendly for a robotic than trying to put a, very elegant 5-course dinner together. So you have to think of what can robotics actually accomplish at the moment and still provide. And then the thing is, robots are expensive. And so it's, there's always going to be the equation, cost benefit analysis of what is someone willing to pay. The robotics actually has to allow you to keep costs in line, or at some point, at what point is it not value added to put it in? So there's always that equation that you have to run to see, am I going to get enough efficiency? Am I going to get, solving for a big enough problem to make that this technology is worth investing in. And so we're still not there, I don't believe, but we're getting closer and closer to figuring out how robotics can, increase our efficiencies.
Yeah. That's fascinating. You mentioned in the answer you just gave, you mentioned the current pandemic and the challenges it's caused. Has AI contributed in any way to your company's ability to respond to the pandemic? And do you see that AI will play a role maybe coming out of the pandemic a year from now? We've got vaccines on board, life is coming back to normal, and the economy is picking up. Will AI play an important role in that response?
I think the answer is yes in all ways. Right now, AI is really data analytical tool for us, allowing us to respond very quickly to ever changing, what's happened in the pandemic. So, but at the same point, it's also been, let's look at the restaurant industry. Right now, there's a lot of restaurants out there suffering because their traditional model doesn't necessarily work well in today's conditions. At the beginning of the pandemic, as everybody was figuring out what I say the new normal, and that new normal changed every week. So based on where you lived and the infection rates where you are, well, your local jurisdiction may have said no one can go inside a restaurant, or you are only allowed 25% capacity inside your restaurant. So, and I'm in the QSR industry, quick serve. We have drive-throughs in our restaurants, which are naturally set up for social distancing. So for us, we were able to adapt very quickly and still be able to service guests that needed to be social distance as we deliver. So what did AI do? Well, that's where you go to third-party delivery. You go to apps that allow you to assemble and then maybe deliver out to a drive. If someone pulls up and parks in a spot, lets you know they're there. Now you're delivering food from a socially distanced, environment to where you are able to adapt. Well, if you are actually at fine dining or something that's really dependent on going down and sitting for that experience, you're not able to social distance at the beginning of the pandemic, and that has evolved, from that. I'm sure Pavan has a lot, within his, environment to where that would much more be impactful to him. For us, we quickly were able to adapt and get ahead of a lot of these issues at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Pavan, follow up on that for us, will you? Because your industry is obviously very different, requires much more indoor activity, direct person-to-person work.
That's right. So, obviously the travel industry as a whole has been impacted greatly during the pandemic. And, there's a smaller subset of people throughout the general population that are even willing to travel right now. And so one of the things that we've really had to leverage is our machine learning algorithms when it comes to price elasticity. And so, when you have the same number of hotel rooms that are open and a much, much smaller pool of people that are willing to travel, it becomes a far more competitive space. And with that, customers have a lot more purchasing power and their price elasticity changes quite a bit. So when that changes the entire supply and demand equation. And so historical models, maybe you're using regression models that rely on, historical data. That historical data is no longer valid, as we talked about previously. And so we really need to use machine learning algorithms that can adapt quickly to the new environment. And so, like I said, a customer's willingness to pay or a slight change in price really changes the demand function, as we have to fill hundreds of thousands of hotel rooms every single week.
Yeah, it's fascinating how in very different companies and corporations, your AI use has been really critical in very different ways. The fact that it plays such an integral role suggests that the employees you were talking about, Bob, might need to know something about AI. And, is that true? If so, is that likely to be more true in the future? Is that something that future workers in the hospitality industry should be embracing? Or do you see that as the purview of other disciplines and not so essential?
Well, that's, let me listen to your question. I believe in training and teaching your staff to be able to provide a great customer experience is essential. And right now, I will tell you that if I went into my restaurants and started talking about AI, the restaurant teams would look at me and go, "What are you talking about?" So, but if I asked them, I said, "Hey, let me see your iPhone." And it's like, do you see all these mobile apps, when you're ordering at Starbucks or you're ordering, through Postmates, do you realize how much they're using AI to help your guest experience? And then the light would go off. So I don't want to, I want to be, no one is really speaking at the end user in terms of AI. They're more using the applications and what AI is doing behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So what we do and what we've done for years is when we first were putting mobile apps and trying to convince our guests to use them, we would actually teach, or at least within my teams, I would have the teams learn how to use the apps first, and then could use a guest experience and say, "Hey, let me show you." Or a guest came up and they were having difficulty with the technology. "Hey, wait a second, let me show you how you can use this to make your experience better." So what we've done is I look at it more in my world from an end user. How can we help them adapt the technology faster to where we can leverage it?
Yeah.
But we have not yet gotten to the point where we talk about it in terms of AI. We talk about it much more in terms of end user, and I think that's coming.
Of course. Pavan, how about your end? Is it a specialty knowledge, or is it something that will become more important across your workforce?
I think that the answer is very similar. If you go to your frontline employee, so someone who's maybe checking someone into a hotel, and you ask them, what machine learning algorithm would you use to upsell a guest to a suite? They would look at you like you had two heads. But if you told, "Hey, I built this predictive model that says this type of customer through some cluster analysis is more likely to upgrade to this type of suite. So make sure when they come in, you offer them this," or, this is a known customer, and every time they've come to visit us before, they've, gone to either a seafood place or a vegetarian place. Don't offer them an offer to the steakhouse, because that's probably not going to resonate. I think if you put it in terms of the actual application, it will resonate a lot more.
Yeah.
So we're doing the work behind the scenes, but making sure that they're implementing the output.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
You've talked, both of you have talked constantly. When you talk about your technology, you talk about your employees. It's always related to the customer. It's related to the end user. It's related to the people who are attracted to your company. Is AI helping them beyond your ability to upsell? Is AI helping your customers and your clients be able to access your services more effectively or more frequently, or is that affecting your bottom line? Bob, what do you think?
The answer is yes. It's the pandemic. I'll flip back, because the pandemic was so was so impactful to the restaurant industry, and still is. So what has AI done? Well, AI has, again, where are you sourcing your guests? How can you adapt your business model to be able to be, still, to actually stay in business? And so what we have seen is, technologies that leverage AI have seen an increase in usage, especially this year. And we're seeing that has directly, brought guests in. So are they new? Are they incremental? Or are they existing? So for us, you always want to build your consumer base. You want to grow transactions. So if you're able to leverage technology to actually grow incremental consumers to your brand, that is instrumental. That's game changing versus just battling over the same consumer pool. And so, yeah, AI has been, instrumental in that piece.
Yeah, terrific. Pavan, from Harrah's perspective, what do you think?
Yeah, it's completely changed our customer experience by becoming a lot more personal. So almost everything we try to do now is personalized for your reason to visit. I mentioned, your dining preferences, the type of room that you like, even the types of shows that you like. We want to tailor everything to be specific to your reason for visiting as much as possible. So, and that may even change from within the same person based on when they visit. So if they're coming Monday through Thursday, I know they're probably there for business travel. So, maybe they need one king bed versus two. Whereas if they come on the weekend, they may be coming with their family. And so tailor their activities to more family-friendly things rather than, nightclubs or bars. So I think personalization is at the key of, everything that we do on an AI basis to make sure that we're speaking to the customer in a meaningful manner that's, right for them.
I want to thank you guys very much for the insight you've given us about AI and your business at present and how it's currently affecting day-to-day activities in your jobs. Could I ask you to do one more thing for me? Put on your predictive hat and tell me if you see any future AI, what's on the horizon for you that you think is particularly exciting in AI that might be useful for your business?
I'll go first. And so I think unlocking the potential of your leaders is the most exciting thing for me. I've spent a lot of my career on training and developing the leaders who are running our restaurants. So how do you accelerate their ability to get to coaching and to teaching versus having to spend a lot of time in data analytics and problem solving? And so let me give an example. So whether it's you're analyzing a food cost issue or analyzing a labor issue, you just know that your margins aren't where they need to be to make your restaurant profitable. But where do you go to solve that? I operate restaurants that are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. With that, we have multiple shifts, multiple leaders running. So I might just have a food safety or food margin problem within my restaurant. But I don't know of all those 21 shifts this week, which leaders should I be focusing on to build capability in teaching right now? So what it can do is it unlocks that. If you can learn faster and identify what area of your business needs that leader to focus on, well, that allows us to immediately and very quickly solve problems that for a while ago, took a long time to do the analytics and then to drill down into that specific shift. AI frees that up. It allows you to move very quickly from those stages and get into coaching and teaching and solve your problems much faster. From a leader perspective, that to me is the most exciting. How do you free up? How do you become more productive? How can you focus on, bigger picture versus, solving, having to drill down and solve problems?
Yeah, that really does become sort of artificial intelligence, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And provide you with that nuance.
Yep.
What new breakthroughs are coming through in AI that excites your firm?
I think the future AI will help guide the way that buildings and casinos and hotels are actually designed. And so how do you typically, you walk into a Hilton Garden Inn, there's 200 rooms, most of them look the same, there's a couple of suites. But now, based on preferences and AI and the reason for visitation, it may change the entire way you design a property. So based on the square footage of the rooms, how many balconies do you need? How many double vanities or walk-in showers? What restaurants should you include there? What's going to be the most meaningful? What entertainment options should you have? So I think, historically, they've been fairly consistent over time, especially in a casino, there's a steakhouse, there's an Italian restaurant. But now I think using AI, it'll completely change the way we build product in the future.
So thank you very much for that, Pavan. That's a terrific answer to that question. I've got one more that's sort of a selfish question, but we could really use your help.
Yes, you can have a comp room whenever you want.
I want to ride on the airplane, man. Yeah, no, what we need your advice about our educational program. So this is a business-focused degree program and department. We do a lot of research, we do scholarship, but even the scholarship is focused on the industry and how to help make it better. One of the things that Dr. Fu has really embraced since she came here is the willingness to look aggressively at our curriculum and think about the skills that our students should have when they graduate the University of Florida to be those leaders that you were talking about in the future. So could I ask, off the top of your head, what sort of skills would you really value from a hospitality major from the University of Florida in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years? Bob, could you start us off?
Yeah, well, one, University of Florida I just selfishly look back at my time. It's being able to analyze your business, data analytics, technology. How do you leverage technology to understand what's going on? So you need a basis in technology. You have to be able to understand, some type of data analytics, understand, what you're seeing and be able to apply it. I still look back at just some of the same skills that I developed at the University of Florida 25 years ago. It would be the same things I would want in leaders today. I'm in operations. So at the end of the day, it's not only, being able to understand spreadsheets, understanding data, but how do you actually interact with others? So how do you communicate? How do you speak? How do you bring others along? Well, those are leadership behaviors. And those are things that we constantly are developing our team on. I do believe coming through the university and coming through the program, you automatically have leadership qualities that make you very attractive to us. We're the employers, we're looking for, individuals. We're looking for you to have a base of skills that we can leverage, and then we can teach you the things you don't already know. But if you already come to the table with that you have a savvy in technology, how to analyze or to look at root cause, and then you can actually work with others and communicate and get along, and then teach and lead others as well to the solution. Those are skills that we're looking for. So I'm looking for that widespread list of skills of not only interpersonal, but also the fact that you can do technical items as well.
But before we move on, Pavan, don't go away, because I really need to hear your answer on this. But you mentioned these people skills, and I've always had the sense that our students learn a lot from their internships. What was your experience? Do you think that's an important contributor to people skills?
Yeah, I still remember applying for those internships. I probably applied to 6 or 7, some in the state of Florida, a few in South Georgia at resorts, but I actually interned at a Marriott property outside of Washington, D.C., the Westfields Marriott Conference Resort, and I spent an entire semester there. It was a great experience in that I wasn't just brought to one department. They did a great job in that I actually rotated and spent a week in every department, including, from security, front desk operations, sales, how you were selling in conferences, how to actually turn an entire conference room. You have 45 minutes to flip this room from serving 1,000 people at rounds to now we have to serve a 3-course dinner. How do you flip that room in 45 minutes? Spending time in the different restaurants, and I even spent a week, it's like in housekeeping. So, how effectively can you make sure that every room is refreshed for a new guest coming in by 3 o'clock that afternoon. So it was a great experience that I had the whole gamut of operations and how to run a resort. What that provided to me was I thought I was going to be in the hotel industry. And what I found was I had a real significant passion for restaurant operations after I completed that internship. So when I left, I actually became very focused on restaurant operations versus hotel operations, even though, having an understanding of both has allowed me to, be very successful. So for me, that internship was reality. This is no longer, you're learning about in class. I really believe getting out there and having real world experience is really important to make the right decisions in your career. And for me, I just look back and it's like, I wouldn't be in restaurants today if I didn't spend that semester, at a great facility like that was and learn where I needed to be.
Bob, thank you for that experience and that wisdom. Pavan, what should we be teaching our students? Help us figure out what to do with our curriculum, will you?
Sure. I think one of the most important skills that they can have coming right out of school is the ability to code. And so technology is changing quite a bit. And so, when I was in school, I graduated in 2000, we were coding in SAS, and then we moved to R, and now everyone coming out of school knows Java and Python. So to have that core ability to program, whether it's open source or not, and be flexible, I think is important because technology is ever evolving, as we know, and you don't want to get, stuck in one language. And then to piggyback on that, once you have coded and you've built models, and this is a little bit about what we just discussed, how do you translate that into business results, right? Don't come into a meeting and tell your boss that, hey, here's my model and this is the R squared. Well, what in the world is an R squared? They'll look at you like you have two heads. So how does that translate into business? What does that mean from a profitability standpoint? What's the ROI on this model? Be able to really translate into business terms for those that aren't either statistically or technologically savvy.
Yeah. I can see the practicality of that in a heartbeat. Dr. Fu, I'm sure that you were listening with rapt attention. You've been very patient to let me lead this conversation, and Pavan, Bob, I want to thank you very much for your answers and all the information you've given us and the perspective. I think that Dr. Fu wants to maybe lead a Q&A session at this point. Rachel, is that true?
We are waiting for see if we have any questions from our audience. Okay, I know some audience, they are typing. So right now, I also want to summarize what our program is going to offer and what we have offered over the years. We do have data science in tourism, hospitality, event, and theme parks. We do have data mining in tourism, hospitality, event management. And we are going to have 2 new courses, AI revolutions and applications in tourism, hospitality, events, and theme parks. We also are going to have the smart cities and AI destinations, attractions. And of course, back to what Pavan and Bob and Mike, you have mentioned, understanding the operations, and we are going to modify our current revenue management that are going to utilize a certain big data when those data are available. And we also have our existing course in GIS applications and advancing spatial analytics in tourism hospitality. So to get a minor in our program, that's 12 credits. To get a certificate will be 9 credits. A minor is for our non-major, and for professional certificate is for our friends in the communities, and also for our major and the minor students. So, and again, back to the internship opportunities, that is very important for our students to enhance their learning. So with our partnership collaborations, that's very exciting. So right now, there's one questions.
So, I work in the casino business, so my daughter does not get to participate and take your daughter to work day. So I gave her the Zoom link here. So if it's a really easy question for me, you know who it's from.
So now this is a question, Bob. Can AI be applied to restaurants to forecast daily demand and do the waste control in the kitchen?
The answer is yes, absolutely. And so for instance, right now, most of our labor systems or our food systems are using historical. And by historical, we're really focusing on the last 3 to 6 weeks of data. But that doesn't, so what we do is that gives you a guideline, and that guideline is then given to the leader to implement, but that's not the endpoint. There's always abilities for the leader to make adjustments. And so for next week, let's say that, so if we're looking historical, but we're coming up on Christmas and your restaurant might be severely impacted by the Christmas holidays. If you're looking historical at 3 to 6 weeks data, and then you don't have a program that knows that Christmas is coming, you need to actually, that doesn't replace the human impact of that data. So what we're looking for is AI is what it's going to do is it's going to say, hey, listen, I know the calendar is about to flip. It's going to be the holidays. So now I am, instead of looking at historical, it's now learning and it's faster and goes, these are the historical changes that I'm looking back a year ago that I need you to be aware of. And this is the impact that we had a year ago. And here's how you need to adjust it. Right now, we still are using a lot of human, intelligence to proactively help our managers with the forecast. And so the short answer is yes. Really, you could dive and spend the whole hour just on how it's actually implemented at the restaurant level.
Thank you, Bob. We have next question. what negative sides can you see coming from AI that might affect customers? Any psychological concerns? Heaven.
Yeah, I think we all need to be cognizant of, what we call the creepy factor, right? And so sometimes you'll be online and you'll think like, boy, I need a new bike. You've never verbalized it to anyone in the entire world, and you just thought about it, and suddenly your feed is filled with all these ads for bikes. So how does that happen? So I think we all need to be a little bit cognizant of, privacy as well. You still want to get personable and make things meaningful, but without the creepy factor. So, that's a fine line that I think we need to balance moving forward as we use AI more broadly.
Thank you. Bob?
No, I think it's Pavan nailed it. The creepy factor, right? It's data has to be acquired. How are you acquiring the data? And there's all these different ways to do that. And so the reality is, I think consumers are going to have to be okay with, how data is acquired and shared and utilized to make their customer experience better. Right now, in the apps, we learn because the consumer is using that app, and we learn over time what their preferences are. But, there's other ways of, the acquiring data that, people are going to have to be comfortable. It's like, listen, brands and businesses are acquiring that to, make the guest interaction much more personable. And you have to be very comfortable with how they're acquiring that.
Thank you. So here's another question. We have a very active audience. Thank you so much. So this is another question. What are the problems and challenges in AI applications? Any example? Any challenges?
I think
one challenge is make sure that you have senior management buy-in on the application as well as the return. These solutions and tools and software, they're not cheap. You mentioned robotics before, Bob. So how can these really expensive robots, what's the return on those? How much am I going to get in labor savings and efficiency? And so I think, getting that buy-in from the very top to say, we're going to spend a lot of money, but it's going to be worth it. That's a challenge from a business standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the cost benefit analysis. And then how about this one? It's like, a lot of times it's, I have very smart people in the room, telling me what the data is. And it's like, hey, we're seeing this trend. We're seeing the data tells us this. And at the end of the day, it's like, I'm like, well, what do I do with that? It's, it's like, okay, I'm not sure what to do with that, how I actually change that into something I can execute at a restaurant level. So a lot of times you can be like paralysis through analysis. And it's like, you got to be able to have the data, and it's like, does it give you something that you can actually go do and execute? Or is it just a lot of data, about your business, and how do you actually apply it? At the end of the day, my job is pretty easy. A guest comes in and I want to give them a great service and give them a hot, fresh, meal that they're going to enjoy and hopefully come back before they go somewhere else. At the end of the day, I need my data to help me do that, to make sure the guest keeps coming back.
Thank you. This is more like a follow-up, very similar to the previous one. What kind of learning curves have you experienced using AI with populations, whether it be team members or your guests? Any learning curve?
I think the goal here is to maybe have your guests not know you're using AI. Right. And so that's how I wanted to come across. I don't want to be creepy and tell them I'm using all this, AI to learn all these things about you, but I want to make it seamless to them and be, just what Bob described. I want to give them a great meal or a great experience without them knowing that I know all these things about them. So I think the learning curve should be transparent to the guests and maybe to the frontline employees as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Pavan, earlier you mentioned, the guest interaction bot that, when you check in. And so I would explain it to this. I travel extensively. I spend a lot of time on airplanes traveling across the country. And so I know I'm sure everybody online has experienced this when you are dialing in and you need a customer representative. I have very unique issues when I can't do something online automatically to book. So when I'm getting 15 questions trying to narrow me in or trying to solve my problem, through a bot, I can tell you that I'm probably like everybody else. I'm like, representative. I know you can't solve the problem for me because I fly 100,000 miles a year. I know you can't do this. And so for me, it's like some of the issues is technology can only go so far. It allows us to be more proficient. It allows for the efficiencies, but it can't solve for everything yet. And so I think that to me is my biggest frustration. So
this is another question. What about the use of VR and augmented reality in the casino, hotel, restaurant environment?
Yeah, that's something we have not done yet, but I could imagine that you could one day, if you want to see what your room would look like or what your suite would look like, you could use some kind of VR to put yourself in the room and look around and see what my view looks like. Or, if you're on the casino floor, what playing a certain game would be like. We don't use it today, but I can definitely see the application.
Mm-hmm.
One of our faculty in hospitality, in his class, he utilized certain software and asked students to rearrange the hotel room design. So that's really a virtual reality relevant. Mm-hmm. And I think that will be very interesting. And next to my office, we also have a virtual room. And that's when we put some videos and put some sensor on the participant's head to see how they react emotionally. Mm-hmm. So there will be something definitely from the educational institute and your corporates. There are lots of things we can work together.
Yeah. Dr. Fu, I think you just had a really interesting thought there that it triggered for me is that you'd be surprised, but how much I work with engineers and product designers. And so when we create restaurants, we spend a lot of time analyzing the flow and how restaurants work for efficiency. So when you're talking about virtual reality, it's a lot of times what we can do is we can actually use models with our engineers to understand exactly what the timing is for us to make and produce a product for a guest. So for us, we do use models such as that for, when we're designing our restaurants for flow, or how can we maximize throughput capacity, in our restaurants, especially at peak hours. So we do do a lot of models like that and figuring out how we can make our operations more efficient.
Wonderful. So here's, we still have so many questions, but I'm going to choose two more. So the others, if your questions are not selected, don't feel sad. We are coming back again in the next month. So you'll have more opportunities to ask. So this is one question. Do you foresee robots, AI, replacing humans, eliminating some jobs? There's a fear. So we can discuss this question from different angle. Bob?
I think it goes back to cost benefit analysis, efficiency, solving for a problem. And so, what do robotics do? Well, they take over jobs that, a lot of times humans don't want to do. And so it's, that would be one part is how can you use robotics to do things that others don't? The other thing would be, if you just don't, if robotics comes to a point where it's less expensive to use robotics and it helps your efficiency and your productivity, that's when robotics would be able to take over for a human. But at the end of the day, it's right now, it's the human equation I haven't seen it to where it has wiped out, the human aspect of needing the human labor or the specific skill set a human can bring to the position. Versus robotics. And so when a robot can replicate and do what a human can do, and that might open the door for it. But right now, I don't see it in the immediate future, except for, where taking over tasks that, necessarily maybe a human would not want to do.
Yeah, I'll approach it from a little bit of a different angle rather than, looking at it from a point of view of job loss, I think in a post-COVID world, I think there's going to be a desire for potentially for less human interaction. So we've already seen guests that are visiting our hotels. We have check-in kiosks where you don't have to interact with a front desk agent. You can either check in on your mobile app or go to a kiosk to get your room key. I mentioned room service before. People may think it's safer now to have a robot deliver your food rather than a person coming and knocking on your door. And so I think the world will change post-COVID. Obviously, we don't know what it's going to look like in the long term, but some people may feel safer having less human interaction moving forward.
Thank you so much. So again, I want to respect everybody's time. In summary, AI is a smart tool. They will continuously assist us in understanding our customers' desires and predicting our residents' and the visitors' behaviors. Because of AI and the data science, hopefully the world will connect our human needs and the wants more effectively and mindfully, not to take away our jobs. Thank you for your time and insights, Bob and Pavan. Thank you again for hosting today's event, Mike. Friends, colleagues, and students, I appreciate you and your presence. I hope you enjoy our webinar as much as I have enjoyed having you as our audience. Look forward to seeing you again. Have a wonderful day.